Now, come on. I'm loving it still. The streak continues. The music is rolling, guys. The Celtics,
I
they
think
do
the
it
theme
again.
song's undefeated.
I think you might be right. I think the theme song is currently undefeated. So are the Celtics over the past 8 games, right? 129 to 102 tonight against the Detroit Pistons on the road. No Jason Tatum, no Drew Holiday, and I want to talk about Drew Holiday, and his current status earlier on or later on in the show. No Al Horford obviously as well. Expected on the first night of a back-to-back. Tomorrow night we got one against Chicago. I think it'll be interesting to see how the Celtics manage minutes from here on out. However, tonight Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Payton Pritchard, they all showed up in a big way on the road in Detroit. It's kind of a common theme now, guys, to see these guys, Pritchard, Hauser, Cornette, Brissett, step up and kind of allow the Celtics to kind of sit a little bit more comfortably here as they move closer and closer to the playoffs. But before we jump into it, before we get started, you guys know the drill. Your initial thoughts, takeaways, reactions to tonight's win. You got muted. We got a muted Justin. No, you're good. There it is. There we go. Yeah.
All right. This was a game where the Celtics kind of started off a little bit sloppy. Didn't have the greatest start. I thought they were getting great looks offensively. I thought Detroit was killing them on the offensive glass. Joe Mazzulla didn't like that, called a couple early timeouts. Good on him. And the Celtics got a very active win tonight. There was kind of a tale of two quarters for the Celtics. Celtics came out sluggish in the first quarter, then second quarter comes around, and they just absolutely just blew the Pistons out in that quarter. I believe it was, I don't know the exact number. I think it was 37-19. Something along those lines. It was exactly 37-19. So a huge second quarter for the Celtics. Great response. We've seen this Celtics team specifically during this win streak respond to adversity really well, especially against teams that they should be beaten, right? You know, these teams kind of hang around for a little bit and then the Celtics go on this huge run and close them out. Great win for the Celtics here tonight. Shorthanded, no Al, no Drew, no JT on a first night of a back-to-back. You go in, handle business, Franco. Celtics walk away up 27 here.
And I think this is something we can go back to the last back we went on, the Team A, Team B mantra when Jaylen and Brown and Kristaps are out one night with Derek White. And I think, who knows, most likely tomorrow we might see Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Drew Holiday, depending on what's going on with his injury status.
Right.
But you could definitely tell that Detroit was a more comfortable team since they did just get done playing us 4 days ago. So they did have more of a sense going into it in the first quarter, and you could see a little bit more comfortability and more of a fight throughout the rest of the game from them.
Right.
But once again, the bench is stepping up more. Svi Mykhailiuk was playing 16 minutes tonight, something that we didn't see anything near in the beginning, first half of the season. And we're starting to see those players that we were hoping to see earlier on in the season start to get that playing time. Not the greatest game tonight from Xavier Tillman, but you got to see what he's going to do off the bench and in this rotation, which is be able to switch on and off in the defensive transitions and being able to fill in for Al Horford. And I think they're getting a lot of great reps in. I mean, we got to see the main Celtics in for the final 3 minutes, and they were looking like they're the G League champions already.
I know Justin loved every minute of that too.
Summer League.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was, again, I mean, at this point of the season,
thought it was July out there. It was amped.
At this point of the year, that's what you're going to get from the Celtics. Expect that. Even, you got Milwaukee on the schedule, but don't expect anything from it.
Right.
It's over now with the
for
regular
both teams.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, the Celtics have the 1 seed locked up. They do. It's there. They got to win one more game to clinch that. If Milwaukee loses, it's done. So the Celtics have had a phenomenal regular season. They're at 56 wins. They've won 8 in a row. Now it's just get ready for the playoffs. Everything from here on out needs to be with a playoff mindset. And I really do think it's important for these next 12 games or 13 games to just make sure you are doing the things necessary that you need to do. Don't get lackadaisical. They haven't all year long. They continue to show up when they need to. And I'm very impressed with a 30-point win with 3 guys, missing on the road.
Right.
That's very impressive.
It's called taking care of business. You're the better team. Celtics knew that coming into this one, and they played like it, right? Pistons kind of came in and they hung around with the Celtics the first 13 minutes of this game, and the Celtics showed their dominance. They went on somewhat of a 24-7 run, and the Celtics really showed what type of team they are. I thought Jaylen Brown tonight was just everything and more for the Celtics team. He continues to produce at a high level. Obviously, no Jason Tatum tonight, as we mentioned early in the show. So this was, just Jaylen Brown was the one tonight. So he went out there, 31 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 steals. He was getting after it at both ends of the floor. You play him 94 feet, up 28 with 3 minutes left. Like, you just absolutely love to see that. He was our player spotlight tonight. Looking at this, it's just such an efficient night. And if it wasn't for his 3-point shooting, which I'm not mad about at all, he had some great looks from distance, just weren't getting them to fall late. He had a near perfect game. I think he only missed one 2-point shot. So just an ultra aggressive game from Jaylen Brown. And I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. Jaylen Brown, especially on the fast break, is one of the best players in transition that you'll see in the game. He's got one of the best mid-range games in the league, but when he can get inside and he's ultra aggressive, we say it all the time with Jason Tatum, but it's the same case for Jaylen Brown. JB gets in this zone that he's been in since the All-Star break. He's really kind of played like this all year round, but I think he's been playing ultra dominant here since the All-Star break. There's no stopping this Celtics team, but there's no question that we need to be talking about this come April rather than a March, regular season game against the Pistons. But a win's a win, and you got to play good. You got to play good during these games.
I think that the Jaylen Brown we saw tonight is the superstar status Jaylen Brown that we get now.
100%.
Because his dominance in the paint has become so impressive that at this point it's not even surprising. I mean, he was just at will every time he wanted to go into the paint. He got into the paint. He got the shot he was looking for. Tonight they were falling. Some nights they won't, but again, with Jaylen Brown, that's what you're looking for him. Getting into the paint, being aggressive.
You know what? You're also not seeing a lot from Jaylen Brown, and I really hope I don't jinx it here, but you're not seeing a lot of turnovers from Jaylen Brown. You're not seeing a lot of forcing, dribble off the foot, dribble into a triple team, double team coverage. Like, you're not seeing that out of Jaylen Brown. I just think that goes towards not only his growth and development, but also his decision making has been huge for the Celtics down the stretch. And there was a play, I believe it was to end the third quarter. Jaylen Brown made this elite extra pass to Sam Hauser in the corner, and Hauser missed the shot, but Joe Mazzulla loved it so much. He kind of ran onto the court after that.
Keep on muting him.
Yeah, you got you muted again, Justin.
Okay. Jaylen Brown's decision making. I don't know why he keeps muting, but Jaylen Brown's decision making, guys, has just been spectacular. He's no longer forcing it, and he's just playing with purpose, I would say. And it's really helping this Celtics team win, especially these last 8 games.
And you know what he's doing is he's not making his life harder.
Right.
He knows.
Right.
He's sticking to what he knows how to do. In a game against Detroit, exactly what we saw tonight is what's going to happen every single time. There's no one on Detroit who can stop Jaylen Brown at any point of a game.
One. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. Like this guy, Jaylen Brown, the progression that we've seen with him every single year has just been very impressive. Every year,
train.
I mean, every year you come out and you're like, oh my God, this guy's taking his game to a new level.
Right.
Whether it was from 19 to 20, the first breakout year, and then the following year was his first All-Star, and then that next year he came out and he really improved his defensive and offensive game. And then last year you saw him average 27 points per game, be all NBA. You're thinking to yourself, all right, there's no way he can improve much more, right? And now all of a sudden you're seeing him taking care of the ball, becoming a better playmaker. The defensive assignments that he's taking on a night-to-night basis has, I think, in my opinion, has been a really underlooked, facet of his game where every night this guy is stepping up and taking on the defensive backbone of this team, and the identity in which they present is Jaylen Brown now. And
Right.
I think that was one of the luxuries of moving on for Marcus Smart, was it needed to be Brown and Tatum who were, being the dominant presence both offensively and defensively. I think it kind of forced them to take a bigger role and a bigger step in that category. And Franco, I mean, defensively, Jaylen Brown's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, tonight, 4 steals. He was active on the transition. That's where he's going to find his best look come playoff time. He's going to be able to control the momentum. When he's making big plays, that's when the Celtics are starting those 20-0 runs in the second quarter with 5 minutes left. I mean, it looked like a game, and I was kind of having flashbacks to last year, like almost halfway through the second quarter. And I was like, wow, are we about to have a neck and neck game with Detroit through?
Right.
And then Jaylen Brown picked off a pass by Cade Cunningham in the second quarter. And then I think a few plays later, someone else got a steal, and he was the first one down the court, got a cherry pick layup, and it was game over from there.
Sorry, Rob. I was gonna say the start of this game had we already clinched the first seed.
Right.
We have 12 games. Like, I don't know if any of you guys caught that vibe, but like that's kind of the vibe I got out of this game. Like, it felt like game 82 of 82, at least in my mind. It's like, the Celtics locked up the first seed. This is a preseason game for them, playing the Pistons first night of a back-to-back. This is light work for the Celtics. Like, they don't need to go out and blow this Pistons team out. But then I'm sitting there thinking, Then it comes in the second quarter, and we're still a little tight. This is before we pulled away, and I start thinking to myself, like, man, like Celtics game before blew a 20-point lead without Giannis. We still won. And then now if we like keep a close game against the Pistons, it's like, oh man, the Celtics are total frauds. They almost blew a lead without Giannis, and then the Pistons hung around. So, Celtics just going out there and asserting their dominance tonight. And it goes to show you that I wouldn't really say that they were leaving there, kind of letting the Pistons win or keeping their foot off the gas pedal. It just
they're an NBA team too. I mean,
right.
They're better than the Wizards.
They are better than the Wizards. You're right. That kind of went over my head, but like look at I'm going to take this in the direction of away from just Jaylen Brown, because you got guys like Payton Pritchard, 20 points and 9 assists. Derek White almost had a second triple-double against the Pistons in the matter of a week. It's like you get these guys, and Kristaps Porzingis, who didn't have the craziest game tonight, but made just enough an impact for the Celtics to win by 27. It's like you get all these guys in these performances, and talked about it in the last post-game show, the flexibility. We're going to get to see this flexibility for the next 13 games, guys. So it's just an incredibly good win for the Celtics. Just kind of guys 1 through 15 getting in there and getting some reps.
Well, I do have a question for you guys, because we didn't get a chance to sit down and talk about the Bucks game. In that fourth quarter, Boston we saw a brand of basketball that wasn't super characteristic of them, especially with what we've seen this year. We've seen it twice now pop up, I want to say in the past month since the All-Star break. How worried are you that that's a tendency? Because before you guys answer, there were two factors that played a really weird dynamic in it, with playing a good team in that good team's best player being out. In a game against Cleveland, right? No Donovan Mitchell on the road. Boston controlled pretty much for that whole game, ran away with it in the third quarter. Fourth quarter is becoming walking the ball up, slow pace. Let's just not lose. Same thing popped up against Milwaukee in the same situation. In years prior, we've glazed over that and thought to ourselves, oh, those aren't problems that are going to show up in the playoffs. However, do you guys think that maybe, just maybe, it's something to kind of to highlight or keep note of, or when the playoffs approach?
Yeah, I think it's always something to keep note of. I think it's always something to keep in your back pocket, but I also think that those types of games happen, and we haven't seen many of those games happen yet this year. I do find it I do find it interesting that it happened twice in the matter of, a couple of weeks. But what I will say is go back and watch the fourth quarter. And I'm not just saying you specifically, Rob. I'm just saying kind of everybody. Like, go back and watch the fourth quarter. The Milwaukee Bucks, look at the shot contests the Celtics were contesting. The Milwaukee Bucks were simply hitting tough shots that they weren't hitting in the first half. Celtics were missing a lot of wide open shots. They actually missed free throws in that fourth quarter as well. So it's like those factor in as well. And when the Celtics aren't hitting their shots, they're contesting. You kind of have to live with that. Damian Lillard's going to do Damian Lillard things. You kind of have to live with it. What I am against is how drastically the Celtics slowed their pace down when they're walking the dog and they'll roll the ball up the court. I'm not totally against that all the time, but when you're playing a really, really, really good team, despite them having Giannis or not, I still find the Bucks a very, very good team. You can't do that. It doesn't matter if you're up 20. It doesn't matter if you're up 5. It doesn't matter if there's 6 minutes or 2 minutes. You can't do that. You can't let And essentially what that did was that lets the Milwaukee Bucks, who already has all the momentum offensively, set up their defense, and they set up a zone. And the Celtics haven't seen much of a zone this year yet. They really I would say they struggled with it. They really had to, it took them some time. Yes, down the stretch, the final 2 minutes, the Celtics were able to kind of figure it out and make some plays down the stretch for sure, which is definitely an upside. But for a majority of that fourth quarter, when Milwaukee threw their zone, Boston kind of did that to themselves, walking the dog, slowing their own pace down, right? So I definitely think that it raises an eyebrow, Rob. Right. But for me, it's like I rewatched that fourth quarter, and I didn't really cringe as much as I did when I was watching it live. I was like, okay, Milwaukee hit some tough shots. We missed a lot of open shots. It happens in the game. Could be a totally different game if Giannis is in there, if Drew is in there, and that doesn't have to be a positive impact for Milwaukee, and it doesn't have to be a positive impact for us. The game could have gone in an entirely different direction. But for the most part, I know your question, and I just answered on the fourth quarter, Rob. For the most part, though, the Celtics played a terrific, dominating first 3 quarters of basketball. I absolutely loved it. Payton Pritchard caught fire. We talk about the flexibility and the depth, Franco. Those guys, everybody played a role in that game. And, they got chippy at the end, but Celtics pulling away was huge.
Yeah, that was a bigger game for the Milwaukee Bucks than it was for us. You have to think about the Milwaukee Bucks are in a consistent battle with everyone else for the 2 seed. I mean, we have the number 1 seed locked up, so the number 2 seed is basically their number 1 seed right now, and that's what they're hoping to get, and they're hoping to play someone out of the play-in tournament. If they won that,
I guess my question is like, is that more of like is that the idea of, oh no, teams mounting a comeback, let's slow the pace down?
That part is concerning,
right?
Because it's like, why would you do it? And that we talk about it all the time, Rob, in the podcast. A frequent topic in the podcast is the Celtics seem to strive away from things when it's working. One of the things is keeping that pace, right? And when the Celtics slow it down, especially, you can't do that in the playoffs against really good teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, like the New York Knicks. You can't afford to do that, and that will get them back into the game. And you saw that the other night for sure. So that part, it is concerning. You can't do that,
because I think that's something that needs to be out of this team's DNA. And again, I hate to bring up Marcus Smart again in last year's team, but that was a problem that you kind of pinned onto a certain individual. And I think,
would you pin it on anybody the other night? Anybody specifically? Or?
I would pin it on the team. I'd pin it on Tatum. I'd pin it on Brown, the 2 best players. I'd pin it on Mazzulla. I'd pin it on Porzingis. Everyone. I mean, it's the whole team's responsibility to have the awareness to get out of that situation and to do the things necessary. And there was a moment with around 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. I think 6:30. The Celtics are in the huddle, and Al Horford is in Kristaps Porzingis' ear saying, "Listen, we need you here. They're in the zone. We need you." And obviously it was a rough game from Kristaps in that fourth quarter, but I think it was the idea that Boston needed to recognize, all right, they're making a run. This is a good team. We can't slow it down. They're sitting in zone. They want us to slow it down and drain the clock.
Right.
Boston was very, very, very 3-point reliant in that fourth quarter for those 8-minute stretches. The last 3 minutes, what did they start to do? They got downhill. They got to the rim. A couple Tatum drives led to a couple buckets, a couple fouls, and a Kristaps Porzingis follow through, which was eventually won you the game.
Right.
So I'm not worried about it, right? I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, this is going to cost the Celtics a championship. However, if it's something that pops up come playoff time, I will be a little bit concerned, because that is something where, it's just the idea going back to complacency. Just because you're up in the fourth quarter against a good team does not mean they're just going to, just give up. They won't. They're not going to give up. And I think Boston needs to realize that, listen, you're up by 20 at the start of the fourth. And they have, mind you, they have a lot, I think way more so than they haven't. They got to put your foot on the gas, get it up to 30. And guess what? You're sitting for the last seven and a half. You got the bench players checking in and having a good time and getting their runs in, so that if their number gets called in the postseason, they've had time to get their legs warm, to get their shot right, to get their, their game clicking. And I think that's super important. And, I'm not worried about it. It hasn't popped up a whole lot. If really, since the Cleveland game, not much since then. I mean, it happened in December against Golden State, but
you know what though? I and maybe it's because we won this game. I genuinely didn't think that fourth quarter was even close to as bad as what I watched a few weeks ago in Cleveland. I don't know. Maybe it's because we won the game. But my thing is the Celtics their defense didn't faze me. Like, their defense wasn't this. We were collapsing. There was a bunch of missed lapses. What I will say is the second chance points, which Xavier asked us the other day in one of the post-game shows, what's this team weakness? What does everybody think one of the main weaknesses is of this team? And mine is closing out defensive possessions and allowing the teams to get second chance points. We saw that a lot. That's why the Pistons hung around in the first half tonight, was because Celtics were giving up second chance points, and that really hurt them. And that's going to hurt them in the playoff series, especially when, Giannis and Bobby Portis are hitting the glass. That demoralizes you.
And so something I do want to talk about too is Drew Holiday, because we saw on the broadcast he's dealing with some, what is it, dead arm?
Dead arm, some shoulder problems. Yeah.
So I looked it up. I was doing some research on dead arm, and it's really just the overuse of the shoulder. It looks like last time against Washington, he got hit on a screen, and it kind of aggravated a little bit more.
It's like a baseball injury.
Very weird to see a basketball player get it. But if you're the Celtics, do you shut Drew Holiday down for the rest of the year and just say, listen, Drew, take these 10 games, maybe throw him in for two of the last three to get him warm, to get him loose?
The good news is he's probably sitting a majority of the games anyway. That's the good news out of it. So it's like, you force him? Not really. No. I definitely think I think you definitely throw him in there. I mean, you got, depending on, you definitely don't force it. But let's just say that the remaining 13 games, no matter who we play, even in that New York game, in that Milwaukee game, these are going to be games for the Celtics where, like Franco said earlier, play 3, sit 3, right? JT, Allen, Drew will probably play tomorrow, and White, Brown, and Porzingis will sit tomorrow, likely. And that's kind of what the Celtics should do the rest of the way, if I'm being honest with you. But Drew, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But shutting him down, he's probably barely going to play anyway. So I don't know if I'd go that far, but I guess the good thing out of this is Celtics are so far up in the standings, they can afford to have Drew Holiday sit out. This could potentially be a injury where if it was the playoffs, Drew would push through it. But since the Celtics are so far ahead, Rob, I don't see a reason why you should, even think about forcing it with Drew Holiday. He's too crucial of a piece to have in this team to not kind of go through this playoff run with us this year.
And I'm pretty sure the Celtics have who is going to be playing almost laid out for the rest of the regular season. Like, they could probably go game by game right now saying, all right, you're going to be sitting out next week, basically putting together their own schedule of who wants to work tonight. And I think they're going to be able to close out with games is Chicago, and then they have a 2-game stop in Atlanta, New Orleans, and Charlotte. So I think they can really rest up a lot of players. I mean, Chicago and Atlanta, those are two play-in tournament teams. New Orleans is going to be an interesting game, but same thing with Charlotte. Or Charlotte's not going to be too crazy, but I think they can really go through this and find a lot of great rotation minutes for players to get more in tune, because once we have Xavier Tillman find his place within this rotation, I think he will be that person who can answer that extra rebounding, closing out defensive stands for us.
Well, my
on
concern with
defense.
Holiday is that this is an injury that requires rest. And the more you use it, the more it's going to linger and the worse it's going to get. We saw Malcolm Brogdon, man. We saw him in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference Finals, virtually unable to shoot. So you ask me, I don't want to see Drew these next 5 games. I don't want to see him probably until game 77, 78, because I want him overly healthy, quite frankly. I want him. Drew Holiday is the X factor. I know what Porzingis brings. I understand it. But when Drew Holiday, what he does for us defensively in the little things, in the things that you don't show up on the stat sheet, I mean, there's a sense of calmness that I feel and the team feels. I feel like when Drew's out there. And the defensive assignments and the switchability and the 3-point shooting has been too valuable to this team to have this guy in and out of the lineup come playoff time, right? I understand that, maybe it's not that bad. I don't care. I don't want to see him. I want this guy at full strength.
All season long, the Celtics health management team has been terrific, terrific, absolutely terrific, and I really trust them in these final 3 weeks here of the regular season. And we talk about Drew Holiday being the X factor. I 100% agree with you. We could talk about the Porzingis and the Derek White and the Payton Pritchard's now kind of entering that conversation, but it's really Drew Holiday, and I don't know how far this team goes without him, to be honest with you. I'm not saying that we can't go far without him, but I definitely that's a pivotal part of your starting 5, and it's the best starting 5 in the league, might I add. So to lose Drew Holiday, especially in the playoffs, is tough. So for me, play it safe, man. Like these games, these are preseason games for us. Preseason to the postseason, right? You want to end the season on good habits, but mainly you want to end the season on good health. You got to make sure, you talked about, you mentioned it. Great comparison. Last year was rough. We got to the playoffs. He couldn't shoot and can't come Eastern Conference Finals. It was most important. He had a great Philly series, got hurt, and then come Conference Finals. He shit the bed. But it's true, so we got to have Drew Holiday healthy for sure. And is a game against the Hornets really important compared to
not at all.
Game against the Milwaukee Bucks, in the semifinals or conference finals, whatever it is. So it's like, it's kind of common sense right now.
And you know what? The runs for Pritchard and Hauser and Cornette and all these guys are so much more valuable. I mean, Payton Pritchard, let's talk about him for a little bit, man. This guy's hooping. Payton Pritchard has been balling out. And as a guy who's been skeptical on Pritchard on if he has a real designated role on this team and if he can truly bring a valuable, asset to a championship team, he's showing me absolutely you can. Absolutely. His playmaking, his shooting, his energy, everything about it was awesome. And he was the reason we beat the Bucks. He was. I mean, the energy he brought was truly unmatched. And I think that is what that's what the Celtics need to be focused on right now, is getting Pritchard, getting Hauser, and getting Cornette, and then Tillman too. You want to get Tillman integrated. I want to see a lot of Tillman minutes just because, Cornette's integrated, right? He's integrated. The question is can Cornette do it in the playoffs? That's kind of more of a wait and see thing. Tillman's not really integrated yet. He's getting better, but tonight was a rough showing. As expected, I don't want to say expected, but reasonably. New team, guys in and out. He's trying to find his spot in his role, which he will. But that's why if Boston right now, and again, Justin, you said this is the luxury, man, of handling business throughout the regular season, 27-1 against sub 500 teams. Guess what the luxury of that is, guys, is that come game 70, your guys, your key players get to rest. You're not standing watching anymore, right? You're not game watching. You're truly just sitting back. You're going through the motions and what you need to do, and you are just focused on the playoffs. So right now, last 12, 13 games, however much it is now, I really want to see a lot of Pritchard. I want to see a lot of Hauser get shots up, get defensive, prowess, and get your defensive identity, found with those guys. Because quite frankly, I want to talk about Sam Hauser next, because he's always been a shooter. And I think, looking at the Celtics bench, they're deep now. It's a narrative to say they're not, because they are a deep basketball team. The guys on the bench are producing now. And you look at a guy like Sam Hauser, I think part of the reason why he wasn't playable at times throughout the beginning of this year and the course of last regular season was, what else could he do other than shoot? Now he's added a little bit of an inside game to his arsenal. Yeah. He's added a defensive presence to his arsenal. There's so much more to Sam Hauser's game that we're seeing, and you can't help but notice it. And I think right now, Sam Hauser has grown immensely, and he could be key for the Celtics.
The Miami Heat are always known for going after these undrafted white guys. Well, Sam Hauser is our undrafted white guy, so suck on that, Miami. Hauser has been absolutely spectacular, especially as of late. He went down with the ankle injury a couple games ago. And tonight it looked like it looked like he was just continuing his second half against Washington tonight. He had a terrific shooting night tonight. Got great looks from behind the arc. His ability to create his own shot is just a chef's kiss. Whether it's on or off ball, he can really create his own shot. Mentioned the inside game. He's not just standing in the corner anymore. He's moving around the floor. A lot of backdoor cuts, a lot of slips, and finding himself some easy buckets. And as shooters know, as hoopers know, once you see one go in, it doesn't matter if it's from 20 feet away or 2 feet away. That's big time for your game. So Sam Hauser has improved tremendously. Can hold his own on the defensive end. His footwork has gotten tremendously better. You watch his footwork 2 years ago. What's going on here? Mike keeps muting.
I don't know, but he's looking completely integrated with the offense and the defense. Everyone on the roster knows where they can find Sam Hauser. When they're driving into the paint, they know the first person they're looking for. If they see a three and some white guy with blonde hair in the corner, they know to kick it out to him, and it's almost Tom Brady with the.
If you squint, it looks like Larry Bird. If you squint it, you think it's Bird.
Kind of.
Fuck it in the corner somewhere.
No, but and I think that kind of goes back to the roles aspect to this team, where it's like everyone's got a role, and right now it kind of feels like they're expanding. And so if there's a situation where you need someone to kind of play out of their role, they can. Because at the end of the day, you don't need Payton Pritchard to go out there and get you 20 points and 9 assists. You don't. Right? In no world should you expect that, or should you ask for that for Pritchard in a playoff game. Mind you, he could absolutely, hop sides on the Pistons, and he could get the Pistons 15 points, 8 assists per game. No doubt. He can do that. But what he's doing is he's playing a role in order to win a championship. And I think that is what's important.
It surprises me that Portland wanted Brogdon and not Pritchard in the trade going back in July or whenever the trade was. That's what shocked me, because Payton Pritchard, a rebuilding team who just got rid of their, franchise point guard, figured you'd want to bring in some homegrown talent like Payton Pritchard with the youth and have him run points. So I was surprised when Pritchard didn't go in that trade, and he's worked out to be phenomenal. And he's really, it's funny. This is the time of year we need these guys to play good, right? It's obviously we want them to play good, games 1 through 40, but if they could play good from 40 to 82, and then heading into the playoffs, that's a huge, huge boost to the Celtics team.
No doubt. I mean, and I think that is what's different. You talk about different, you Porzingis and Holiday, those guys are different. there's roles, man. Everyone knows what needs to get done in order to win the championship. And I think, even looking at the coaching staff, I think they know what they have to do. They know what the assignment is. And I think that is the growth of this team. And right now, I hate to keep saying it. I've been saying it, I feel like, for the past 5 games, but it's just wait and see. The Celtics are getting reps right now to get ready for play. What do you think we're doing, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like right now, there's not much stock into these games. It really is. It kind of feels like preseason where it's like, oh, look at what Pritchard's given us right now. Hopefully he does this in the postseason versus the preseason. It's like, oh, look what Pritchard's doing right now. Hopefully he does in the regular season. So it's like, I think for Celtics fans, and what's important is, one, be watching these games, I think, to just see them handling business. Because I do think that's the important factor right now, right? Is like Justin says and Mazzulla says, taking what the defense gives you, staying on task, staying locked in. I think that's very important. If this team continues to stay locked in, I mean, they've won 8 straight since they dropped 2 in a row, guys. I mean, what are they since the All-Star break? Like 16-2?
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, another level of dominance. So, I mean, tomorrow night against Chicago, manage health. I'd be shocked to see KP in the lineup. I bet it's Derek, JT, and Al. I bet Brown and Porzingis and Drew are on the injury report. Again, that's just a prediction, but really, like, that's where I'm at with them right now.
It's hard to be anywhere else right now because it's like tomorrow night, second night of a back-to-back. You're playing a Bulls team who you could see in the first round, even though it's highly unlikely. I think you still have to kind of keep the Bulls in your back pocket, as well as the Atlanta Hawks, who you're going to see as well. So, second night of a back-to-back, don't force it. I would assume you're going to see Al. Usually you kind of see like, right. If Porzingis isn't playing on the first night, Al will play on the second night or, vice versa. So, that's how I would assess that. And then usually when, Brown sits one night, Tatum will play the other. So, expect a switcheroo, and then Drew will probably remain out because his injury is a real injury. It's not like Al Horford where he has a big, stubbed his toe and something like that. Right. So just keep an eye out for that. And the Celtics are, again, I think the Bulls are a better competition than the Pistons, obviously, but go in tomorrow and take care of business. You're still better than the Chicago Bulls, and there's no excuses for the second night of a back-to-back. Celtics are like 9-2 on second night to back-to-back this year. So there's no excuses coming from them.
I think there's a lot if going into Chicago series, this is going to be one of their final stretches. I think this is pretty much the final rough stretch before playoffs. Once you're done with this, you're back home. I think they have a few games at home in a row, and then I think they have some short travels after that. But just get through this weekend and next week, and they're going to be able to go through the rest of the season and hopefully be able to have a little bit more fun, and we'll maybe see a definitive answer. I know Mazzulla addressed it earlier on in the week. He's not too concerned about the 15th roster spot, but we might find out who that will be.
Right.
Because it has to be someone. Obviously, you're not just going to leave an open spot open for no reason heading into a playoff series. So it's going to be really interesting to see what these players can do with the minutes that are going to be available.
No doubt. I do think one game left on the schedule I am kind of actually really excited for is that April 3rd game against Oklahoma at home, that first game back from the road trip. I think there's some stuff that you can find out about this team against Oklahoma. I think it's a good feel-out game, a potential finals matchup. So when I look at the schedule, if there's one game I want to see them full strength and healthy, and kind of in go mode, it is for that OKC game. I don't really care about the Knicks game. I don't really care about the Bucks game. But against OKC, closing out the year, they got us, on the road back at their place. I'd like to get them at TD Garden, before the season's over.
Yeah.
You got it again, Justin.
What the shit? Nope, sorry for cussing. I think it's important. Oh gosh, was I muted again?
No,
I
you're
think
good,
that game is important. Of course, I wasn't muted for. You know what?
You're-
I'm
Now
talking.
you're getting
Uh,
censored.
All
You're
right, well,
just
you
getting
know what?
censored.
Listen, this is ridiculous. I don't know what's going on. Listen, that game against the Thunder is going to be big. That's really the only game you got to be healthy for, in my opinion, because it's like Thunder in the West are number one seed, kind of number one seed in the East, number one seed in the West. I know Thunder. Many people don't believe they're going to make it out of the first round just because of the lack of experience. I think otherwise. I really do. Maybe a little bias in me since you guys know I'm a big OKC supporter, but that game for sure is kind of the only game I have circled on the calendar. I could care less about Grant Williams coming back. If I'm being honest with you, he's on the Hornets. I mean, really, I could care less about that game. But other than that, we're watching 12 straight games of Celtics preseason basketball. So
Yeah,
finish
most
season
definitely.
strong.
Yeah, and you know what? It started tonight against the Detroit Pistons on the road, 129-102. The Boston Celtics were able to absolutely steamroll the lesser Detroit Pistons tonight. Derek White dwindled with a triple double.
Lesser than who? Lesser than who?
The Boston Celtics, lesser than the Boston.
And
the Washington Wizards.
yes.
Derek White again teetered around with a triple double, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 11 assists for D White in tonight's action. 33 points for Jaylen Brown, 4 steals, and then fast PP, 8 Mile PP tonight, guys, because I think it was some 8 Mile energy in
Love
the building.
me some PP.
20 points, 9 assists. Celtics obviously without Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Drew Holiday. They will face the Chicago Bulls tomorrow night, Saturday, March 22nd at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. Catch that game tipping off on NBA TV and your own NBC Sports Boston, where Drew Carter and Brian Scalabrine will have you guys covered over there. Guys, however, after the final buzzer sounds, we'll have you covering back over here on CTW for Celtics post-game show. I'm Rob. Next to me is Justin. All the way over there to the right is my man, Nick Franco, guys. And until tomorrow night, go Celtics.